This passage is adapted from Chen Kun, Footsteps on the Roof, translation by Hu Ying. The narrator is a man who has recently moved from Yangpu West, a neighborhood in Shanghai, to Wangpu East, a neighborhood across the river. I moved here half a year ago. The day before I moved, I met someone at a friend's home who claimed he could tell fortunes. As soon as he saw me, he congratulated me on my pending move. I smiled. It was no big secret. Then I asked casually if there was anything else to congratulate me for. He held my hand for a careful examination and said he saw a peach blossom, which meant lucky in love. After that, he stared intently at my palm for a long while. This romantic good fortune of yours is really peculiar. Look here, it lies hidden in the lines of your palm. He stroked my palm with his index finger. Also, there's a major yin influence. Any harm in that? I asked. Can't tell. This amateur fortune teller was the first honest man I had met, someone who would actually admit that he couldn't tell, which must have meant that he could tell about the other stuff. The next day, I moved. I should make it clear that even after finishing the move, I didn't have any luck that was even remotely peachy. A chrysanthemum I had planted in a flower pot was blooming, yellow petals, the kind the woman poet Li Qingzhao liked to write about. The mums made my empty balcony looked like a small cemetery. Now back to my move. The building was finished only a few years before, yet I was already the third owner of this apartment. The day I moved in was dark and cloudy. Our truck was stuck in the tunnel for a whole hour until we were all seeing stars. By the time we emerged, a storm had come and gone, but the sky remained gloomy. On the porch in front of my building was a stain, a light brown one. At first, I didn't take any notice of it until I stepped on it and slipped. I was puzzling over it when my friend started to carry my stuff upstairs, so I pulled myself together and followed them up. The move was completed, and not a single neighbor had come out to watch the show. It was dark by the time I saw my friends off. Standing at the curb, I looked at the building. Only a few lights were on, including my own too. Weeds grew amid heaps of construction material abandoned at the curb. The streetlight was broken and there was darkness all around. It was a bit of an effort to walk all the way up to the sixth floor. I opened the cast iron gate and realized that someone was standing in the corridor, leaning over the banister to look down. I cleared my throat. Are you the new tenant? It was a woman with a very soft voice. Her door was half open and the light from inside lit up the tip of her nose. Some music wafted out, the kind with poor sound quality. Are you the owner of 602? I asked. Oh no, I used to live here in 601. Just here to take a peek. No, I'm not the owner. I couldn't very well pursue the matter, so after exchanging some pleasantries, I went back to my own apartment. Inside the new place, even the four walls felt cold. I didn't plan to stay here for long, so I decided not to paint the walls. The noise from the tunnel drifted up. I stood on the balcony and looked around for a while. Then I moved the chrysanthemum to the windowsill. The blossoms were no longer fresh. I started to gather together some odds and ends, tripping all over myself. Just to boost my spirits a bit, I turned on all the lights in the apartment. Still, it didn't feel bright. The walls were beige, painted by the previous owner. There were drawings by a childish hand, friendly like, and a faint footprint, a couple of mosquito corpses. At this point, the doorbell rang. As I strolled over to the door, I tried to guess who it might be. The door opened and there was the neighbor I had met just a minute ago. I asked if anything was the matter. She answered, beaming a bright smile, if you have any questions or if there's anything you don't know, just come and ask me. All right, I won't hold back. Under the light, her face seemed pale, her lips painted a bright red. She had a pretty neck. Her hand rested casually against the door frame, a young-looking hand. We were standing so close that I didn't look at her figure. She had a sort of baby face, but there were tiny wrinkles in the corners of her eyes. This place is different from Wangpu West, she said. You hardly ever see anybody and it might take some getting used to. She gave me another smile and went back to her apartment. At this point, I remembered the fortune teller's peach blossom. When the months were fading, would a peach come into bloom? Okay, which choice best describes the narrator's perspective on the experience of moving into his new home? He's initially disappointed, but later feels better about it. He feels that the process was challenging and rewarding. He's dismayed that the experience wasn't more of an adventure. He's amused by the day's many mishaps. Okay, um, so we know that, he talks about moving, and he obviously has the expectation that something would happen because this fortune teller had told him that he would find love. And right. And so, there was the move, right? There was this incident with the stain, which didn't really go anywhere. And he was kind of disappointed because I think he expected people to come out and watch, but there was no one. And yeah. And then obviously he met this woman. So um, I don't think I like C. I don't think he's dismayed that the experience wasn't more of an adventure. Is that Did he want it to be more of an adventure? um, yeah, so I don't think it's D because he's not amused by the mishaps. And I don't think he finds the process challenging. In fact, he thinks it was underwhelming. Um, yeah, I would go with C. I think he wanted it to mean a little more than it did. And this part A would make sense if the question was about not just moving, but also the fact that he met this woman. So for this, C is better. Which choice best characterizes the narrator's opinion of the fortune teller he met? He feels that the fortune teller is not someone to be taken seriously. He treats the fortune teller with suspicion. He believes that the fortune teller may be able to predict the future. He is disappointed that the fortune teller makes vague predictions. So I think it's C because there is this point where he says that because he had said that, he couldn't say something, uh, it meant that he could tell me about the other stuff. So line 19 to 20 is, 17 to 20 rather. He was the first honest man I had met, someone who would actually admit that he couldn't tell, which meant that he could tell me about the other stuff. So, so he believes that the fortune teller may be able to make some predictions. The image of the chrysanthemum on the balcony mainly serves to suggest that the narrator is confident about his ability to make a warm and inviting home. Despite the difficulty of the moving process, the narrator has made a good choice and will thrive in his new home. The narrator's love for poetry and natural beauty permeates every aspect of his life. The new apartment is so cold and bleak that even a beautiful flower can't transform it into a happy place. So it's D because he says it, he had planted a chrysanthemum that was blooming, but because the balcony was empty and the house was bleak, those flowers make it look like a small cemetery. So it's the fact that the new apartment, it's so bleak that it doesn't even the flower can't really change its aspect. In the context of the passage, the words dark and cloudy and the word gloomy in line 35 primarily serve to. Okay, so the day I moved in was dark and cloudy. Our truck was stuck in the tunnel. By the time we emerged, a storm had come, but the sky remained gloomy. So they kind of accentuate the bleakness of the apartment, heighten the contrast between the stormy weather and the excitement that the narrator and his friends are experiencing, establish the dismal and foreboding atmosphere that characterizes the narrator's new home, enhance the sense of dread and regret that the narrator feels as he leaves his old neighborhood, provide a description of the day's weather that matches the narrator's irritable mood during the course of the move. So it's B because I don't think the narrator is irritable, and we don't have any description of his old neighborhood. And I don't sense a sense of excitement that, because of the move. In fact, if you read that part again, it says that um, on the porch in front of my building, there was a stain. I was puzzling over it when my friend started to carry my stuff upstairs. So there's no particular mention of being excited about the move. So B is good. As used in line 38, the phrase puzzling over most nearly means this is related to the stain. Um, I was puzzling over the stain, which means I was thinking about it. I was wondering where it came from. So I was wondering about, right? I was thinking about. It's not, doesn't really mean that you were marveling at it or that you were dazed by it. And I don't think he was worried. He was just kind of thinking where it came from. Which choice best supports the idea that the narrator has moved to a place characterized by dereliction and neglect? Okay, so let's mark the line numbers 29 to 31. 29 to 31. Then you have 35, 38, 45, 48, 35, 38, 45, 48, and 70 to 73. 70 to 73. Okay, so we have to provide evidence for the fact that the place was neglected. Back to my move, the building was finished only a few years before, yet I was already the third owner. On the porch in front of my building was a stain. At first, I didn't take notice of it until I stepped on it and slipped. Weeds grew amid heaps of construction material abandoned at the curb. The streetlight was broken and there was darkness all around. So it's obviously C because this gives the impression of a neglected place. I started to gather together some odds and ends, tripping all over myself. Just to boost my spirits, I turn on all the lights. So this is back to his apartment. So here the answer is C. According to the passage, turning on all the lights in the apartment reveals that all of the rooms have spacious, airy interiors. The apartment is much smaller than the narrator expected it would be. It has a warm and cozy feel. There's evidence of the lives of previous tenants. I think it's D, right? Because the walls were beige, painted by the previous owner. There were drawings by a childish hand and a faint footprint. So all of this is evidence of the lives of previous tenants. The use of the words beaming and bright in lines 82 to 83 primarily implies that the narrator's neighbor fascinates the narrator with her kindness and beauty, gives the narrator a hopeful feeling because her demeanor is such a contrast to the apartment's atmosphere, inspires the narrator to make a point of meeting the other tenants, overwhelms the narrator with a friendly manner, make him relieved to retreat to his apartment. So it's B, right? We clearly see that connection between the narrator and the neighbor. In fact, so much so that towards the end, he starts to wonder if the fortune teller was right about him finding love. So there is the gloomy atmosphere of the environment, and then there is this beaming, bright smile of the neighbor. So there is the contrast. Based on the passage, it can reasonably be inferred that compared to the narrator's new neighborhood, Wangpu West is characterized by more opportunities to interact with people, shortage of available homes to buy or rent, many gardens and lush green spaces, frequent storms and cloudiness. So this comes from here. This place, you hardly ever see anybody, and it might take some getting used to. So there's very few opportunities for interacting with other people, right? So that should be the answer. Okay, let's grade this. A, C, double D, B. Okay, so one is A. A, C, D, D, B. And ACDBA. ACDBA. Okay. So here we are going with initial disappointment, but later feels better, looking at the overall structure of the passage. Maybe C was an exaggeration because there's no evidence for the fact that he was looking for an adventure.